Hey. So let's continue my top list of things to learn. And this one is going to be aimed at the people who already know the basics of programming and already feel like, maybe you even have a job as a programmer. So, first and foremost, if you're getting into, if you're in programming and you want to expand your learning and your basic patterns, how to produce production code and all that stuff, I'll give you a list of the things that from my experience anyway are very important to most of the employers around, at least here in Gothenburg, and I'm pretty sure that this is fairly universal. So the first thing you want to get really good at today is functional programming. Whoo! I mean, nobody's heard that, right? Because it's, not on every single YouTube video and every single newsletter. How to be functional, how to write functional programming in Java, how to do functional programming. It's all about that now. Sorry. And when I say learn functional programming, I don't mean go into Haskell, and I don't mean do F#, and I don't mean get really crazy with monads and all that stuff. I am saying that for you to learn enough functional programming, because I love that there's a lot of people out there I talk to, and they all say that, I love the functional style, and I love functional style, and I only do functional, and that stuff. What they mean is about the same thing as I tried to communicate in one of my tech talks here in Gothenburg, where I basically say that you only need to do about, it's not even 50%, it's only the bare bones teachings of functional in order to get almost 90% of all the benefit from that programming style. And I'm talking about pure functions, I'm talking about composable functions, and that's it. That's the entire thing. And if you want to do something fancier than that, trust me, you will most likely figure out what I've figured out, or at least found out, and that is that when people come and talk to me about compose and currying and functors and monads and all these other benefits, they very rarely, it makes a lot of sense at an academic level, but I will go one further and say that the idea that you can express yourself in such a generic way that you can create these perfect pipelines of transformation functions it is possible. I have tried a lot to make that my default programming style, and I have never made it work. I couldn't do that. I actually argue that I think that the issue here is the same type of issue people have with mathematics. It's so generic that it becomes very difficult for your brain to think in these terms. If you can, I am very impressed, and I would very much like you to contact me and teach me, because it would be great. I mean, I can understand the seduction or the appeal of monad-based programming. It would be great, but it's also something that's very difficult to get right, and if you don't know what you're doing, you're actually going to damage your project, and you're going to do it in ways that are much more destructive than just the code that you're writing. I see people do it in JavaScript, and they throw in monads, and I kind of go, this is really dangerous. Hopefully everybody else on the project knows what you're doing, and the people after who's going to inherit your code knows this stuff, because that is a very, if you want to do monadic programming, that's a long-term investment. It's not something you just kind of throw in there, because you can, of course, everything's solvable, but it's going to put a lot of extra overhead onto your project. Anywho, that's the first thing. So functional programming, really big thing, and this is the great part. I think that the reason why functional became so popular is because of another pattern that people are realizing is really horrible to do right in objective programming. Objective or OOP, which is test-driven development. That's the mastermind, I think, or the driving force behind the functional movement. because people realize that, hey, everybody wants to write tests and we need to write tests because otherwise it gets really difficult for us to maintain our project. And then they start doing that in object-oriented land, and they realize, damn it, because of all these practices that they have in object-oriented programming, there's all this mocking and stubbing and faking and spying and whatnot that has to be done. And I can tell you honestly, in general, it takes maybe, depending on how large your objects are, it takes me like 50 lines of stubbing and mocking to test a single function on a single object, at least at where I work, which is just ludicrous. And my rule of thumb is that if something is painful, and if it is painful, it's not going to get done. I actually made that bet with my colleague at my job, and I said, all right, you put up all these nice tools that are going to do all these fancy things and remind people to write tests. And he said, yeah, I'm very proud of that. And I said, yeah, you should be. But I know enough about human nature to say that it's not going to make a difference. And he said, what? What do you mean? Well, because every tool, you haven't solved the problem. The problem, people are not writing tests, not because they don't know they should write tests, but because they don't want to, because it's difficult, because it's easier for them to ignore it. It's the same thing when you were a kid. I didn't brush my teeth by myself. My parents had to remind me and force me. That's the way how you break bad habits. Same thing here. So that's my argument why functional became popularized here in the modern world, because, it's a very, very nice and easy way to write test-driven code. So what did we talk about? We talked about functional programming, test-driven development. Okay, and the next thing that's up for grabs is this hype around microservices, which is, in my opinion, feels like it's dying down a little bit, because people are realizing that what you're really doing is that you're taking the complexity of a monolith and putting it at the architectural level instead of at the code level. If you want to see, in my opinion, probably the best architectural solution I've ever seen, look into Elixir, where you basically have a monolith made of microservices. It's beautiful. It's absolutely beautiful. Anyway, so my opinions on microservices and all this good stuff is that know when to apply it. So I made the unfortunate mistake, and I kick myself every day for this, because I started thinking that I'm going to build my startup using microservices, and then I'm going to have a RabbitMQ queue or Kafka or something in between with messages and all that good stuff that everybody's so hyped up about. I swallowed the hook and the line and the lure and like everything on that entire thing. And it took me maybe 2 years to realize that I don't have enough time, energy, and so forth to maintain a medium to fairly large sized backend by myself and do all the front end work and be like the only person working on it. I just don't have the resources. And then I switched over to serverless, or in my scenario, I started looking at Lambda functions at Amazon. I didn't really like the interfaces, so I went with Firebase instead. And I made more progress in a month, in essence, than I had in 6 months using the microservice-oriented architectures. So my rule of thumb is to take a look at serverless. There is a lot of stuff going on there, and I'm pretty sure that for smaller companies, and if you want to get started like really, really quickly and build something cool, that's probably the way to go. So yeah, and most of these services are leveraging like Node and JavaScript. So, if you haven't figured out how I feel about JavaScript, yeah, just wink, 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 JavaScript, wink. Okay, so I think those are the 3 most important things at the technical level that you as a fairly seasoned programmer should have a look at. Those are the definitive things. And then there are soft things that I don't know if this is going to be true, but I do hear that machine learning is getting some tractions in certain circles. But this is where I would start anyway. Have a great day.